Hi,
How's
how
everyone
are you?
doing? Yeah, good, thank
Good,
you.
good. So I just wanted to say thanks so much for both of you wanting to join and being a part of this. Like I was telling Nikki, we've been talking for quite a bit, trying to get this all organized. So I'm really happy that you guys were able to do this. And I was actually just listening because I think I told her a while ago that I was listening to your podcast, and then I was listening to it again earlier today just to get myself a little situated on that. And your voices are very soothing.
Oh, thank you.
Really,
Thank you.
really,
I always
yeah.
think I sound like I've got a shrill lisp.
You don't have a shrill lisp. Although
It's just
as somebody who edits our voices quite a lot, I think we both breathe quite heavily into
okay. Well, it looks like yeah, us as creatives were really, really hard on ourselves, but I didn't hear any of that. So I didn't
yeah.
hear
Thank you.
any breathing or anything like that. I feel like you guys sound extremely natural and sound extremely eloquent. So, so yeah.
Also, not something we're accused of that often.
No.
Oh,
Well, who was it the other day who said that we fight like cats and dogs?
Yes. Yeah. We did an interview with another podcast the other day, and they were saying, "Oh, how well you get on," and I was like, "Oh, we're the nicest to each other when we're recording the podcast hours. It's much more brutal."
Yeah, anything
So,
goes.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks very much for that. It's so nice to catch up with you again, because obviously we originally met at the Jericho conference 2 years ago,
Yeah.
which was a really long time ago. But
I know.
that is like the great purpose of going to those conferences, is you meet people from all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys, did you meet Rachel? So there was someone named Rachel McLaughlin there.
Yeah. Rachel and Michelle, and I think Rachel sent me one of her drafts of her book to beta
Yeah.
read.
Uh-huh.
Very, very terribly did the first half of it and then got busy. So I need to get in contact with her again and say like, "Hi, would you still like me to read this?"
Yeah, but I just had her and her mom on like
Yeah,
just a few episodes back. So yeah, it's like for me it's really interesting when you have that interfamily dynamic in terms of creativity because most of us I feel like don't have that. So that's really that's a
yeah.
really coveted relationship that I wish I had. So yeah. And
Yeah.
so I felt like this would be the best. I was like, okay, I must not be the only one that's going through this type of thing. So trying to get in touch with other people, such as yourselves, whether you're on the very beginning stages of writing or a published author and getting having a book out there and everything, we all go through that type of thing. So feel like having these conversations can help someone else that's also listening in. And so yeah, I really appreciate you guys wanting to be a part of this. So
Yeah, no worries.
I'll just read both of your intros and then we'll get into the questions. So, Nikki, I'll start off with you. Nikki writes primarily middle grade and YA fantasy horror. Her first still unpublished novel was longlisted for the 2024 Dyslexia Children's and YA Novel Award. She's currently in the final stages of redrafting a YA Gothic horror romance with overtones of British folk horror and hopes to have it out on Query next month. She also writes and produces the dueling folklore. Goodness, I wasn't going on with my folklore podcast, Wyrd Folk, which is already a top-rated show in 5 countries on the Apple Podcast Performing Arts chart. When not writing, she loves K-dramas, weird gothic fiction, and anything with romance storyline.
True.
Sam is a BAFTA Rockcliffe winning British American genre writer, obsessed with complicated women who do bad things for good reasons. Her debut novel, Sleuths, will be available in May 2026 and is a comedic crime romp exploring toxic fan culture and celebrity scandal. She's one half of Wyrd Folk, a dueling storytelling podcast, and has also written for Happened Here and No Sleep. When not chained to her laptop, she can be found exploring Iron Age ruins in the Cotswold Hills or digging through shelves of London's finest occult bookstores. So again, I really appreciate both of you guys being here, taking time out. I you're both really busy, and of course, obviously, with the podcast and with their own separate things. So yes, thanks so much. And so just in terms of like basic questions and things like that, like my very first one is like, could you give us a little bit, obviously both of you, information as to whether you felt like supported in your creativity when you guys were little, or when was maybe like the first time that you guys felt that sort of creativity that you wanted to maybe put hand to paper?
I think it's a complicated question for us because our family background, both our parents came from very working class backgrounds. Our mother was raised in a council estate, our father too, but who raised themselves out of it to middle class. So while they were always very supportive of creative things we did, our dad in particular, I think would get kind of dewy-eyed over either of us playing music, drawing pictures, writing stuff. And both of our parents read substantially. Like reading was normal in our household and pretty much what we did. So much so that our mum used to like ban us from going to our room to read because she'd get really frustrated with it. But at the same time, I think there was an expectation that arts were not necessarily a job. It was a lovely thing to do, but it wasn't necessarily something that you should strive towards as a career unless it was a practical version of that, if that makes sense. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I feel like that was maybe one of the main reasons why I shied away from writing, is because I never really, I felt supported for sure. Like my mom would find my writing, and I had like 5 journals and I would write on each of them every single day. Would always tell me that I was a good writer, but I never envisioned that I could actually do it professionally, because we still obviously have that motto of, starving artist. So everyone tries to gear away from that. So
and it was just never in discussion, was it? Sorry, Nix, you go ahead.
I don't know if that was true. Like I remember famously that you wanted to do an art degree at university, and Dad in particular would like you to do law, and you did law, and it took you a long time to get back to the arts. You went the full circle.
Yeah, I despise doing a law degree.
Yes, well, I don't think you should do a law degree unless you actually want to. Yeah.
So as both of you, since you're both so drawn into like folklore and haunted places and morally complex characters, like how did like what in particular in terms of that helped you mold or shape your confidence as storytellers? And why those particular genres? I know that Nicola, you tend to gear a little bit more towards like romantasy, fantasy, and Sam, you're a bit more in terms of horror. So why those specific genres?
Okay, I'll go first this time. I think it was what, for me, and although we did share books, there's a 6-year age difference between us. So like, I think I initially would get a lot of books first, and then they would be kind of like lying around the house.
Because I read a lot of inappropriate content for my age.
Oh yeah, well yeah, there was like Mum's Mills and Boone books that she used to
Rice books.
Drawers in her bedroom. Yeah, so I mean they were around. But it was things like, we've talked about this before, like those Ladybird books that you get as a child. I had tons of those, and it was kind of Rapunzel, Cinderella, Puss in Boots, and a lot of those are English folklore stories. We talked about this on the show a lot. There's kind of Puss in Boots, Jack the Giant Killer, all those original kind of fairy tales. They are the roots of that. And then because we lived in America at that time, and I had the Ladybird books that were kind of read in kind of lovely plummy English accents with classical music. And as a kid, that's what I would listen to quite a lot. And then when we got back to England, we did not have a lot of money to go on holiday because we kind of left the States and left most of our money behind us. And so we would go on holidays, really classic British holidays, in which you would get into a car at 4 a.m. and be given egg sandwiches. And like, this is before like the advent of phones. And you would have to read a book in the back of the car. And I remember Samantha and I with a duvet cover over the top of us, with our seatbelts kind of half done up so that you could sit sideways, and we would be reading books. And what we would read is fantasy books. Like I remember distinctly reading like point horror, point fantasy series. I don't know whether you came across those series. Point horror and point fantasy were big when I was like 12 or 13. And then we would go and stop along the way at places. And there was a particular book that we talked about before, Dark and Dastardly Dartmoor, that we must have picked up on a holiday. One of us did. And in it were all sorts of kind of ghost legends, But I have remembered since we talked about this that actually at school as well in those days there was much more of kind of like an oral culture of ghost stories to scare your friends with. Particularly that one, Samantha, do you remember the one about the couple in the car that break down and
There's loads of them,
urban
because
legends?
our parents had a lot of friends who also had children, so like a Friday night or a Saturday night was generally either they had people come to our house or we went to theirs, and all the kids got made to go upstairs. Like, you weren't, like, the adults were having a party downstairs and the kids were to be not heard or seen while the adults were doing whatever they were doing. So there'd be a pile of us in someone's bedroom and telling frightening stories to scare the younger kids, of which I was one, was considered like the best thing to do. So I have quite a lot of memory, like being at Auntie Paddy's and stuff like that, and like John and Edward and like all those scary stories, and it was all the urban myths.
Yeah,
like the cutting squares of someone in the house on the
babysitter on the telephone. Yeah.
The axe man's above your car, or the police have come, don't get out. And when you look back, your husband
drip one with the blood. The blood drips.
Yeah.
So I think actually that's probably the genesis of it. And then I remember being inappropriately allowed to rent Bram Stoker's Dracula at the age of 13 for a sleepover party, and that being I think that had quite an effect on my mind, just the visuals, the horror for that as well.
No, I despise that version of Dracula. I despise any version of Dracula that creates a Mina and Dracula love story, because she's such a wonderful character and then you reduce her to a romantic interest. Anyway.
Yeah, that I'm really into also kind of like urban legends and that kind of thing. I think I stumbled across something not too long ago about basically real life stories that inspired a lot of these urban legends.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Yeah. What scares both of you most about writing? You know, especially if you're exploring dark folklore or morally gray characters or areas or haunted emotional landscapes.
So I don't think there's anything in writing that scares me. I think there's things about myself and my approach to writing that sometimes concerns me, if that makes sense. So I won't say what it is, because I think our family's still a bit odd about it, but we found out something that was like a bit of a weird family secret last year. And I am sort of secretly desperately want to write about it, because to me it's an incredible story. It's bonkers that it's part of my family history, and the way that I connect to things is by storytelling. But at the same time, there's, I think, a bit of you that's like, well, am I? And there is this encouragement in arts, right, that you should be the right person to tell the story, that it should be personal, that it should be something deeply connected to you. But it also worries me sometimes, like, am I hawking my traumas or histories, things like that? Like, we both of us have lived in Japan at different times. While I was there, I had, I would say, a moderate mental health crisis, where I experienced exploding head syndrome, which is where you hear banging on the walls around you when you go to sleep at night, which for a while made me worry I was genuinely haunted. Again, that's not something I've put in a story, but every time I start to think about it, I'm like, that's a piece of trauma I haven't mined. And that's what worries me. It's less the act of writing itself that scares me, or any of the topics that I cover, and it's more my relationship to writing and the way I use it to work through how I think about the world. But then also this worry that it's not just working through the world, it's me glorifying parts of my personal story that perhaps I shouldn't. I don't know. Constant worry.
Okay. Wow.
That's great interesting, because I didn't know half of that.
What about you, Nikki?
I have incredible imposter syndrome. No matter how hard I work on that, no matter how many times I hear a positive piece of feedback, I will always only ever focus on the negative parts of it. It is like and I don't think it's unusual, but I just think it takes such incredible resilience, especially these days, to be a writer and to be a creative. And we've talked about this recently, like it's harder than ever. And you all go through times, and I think I quite often, I've been through a long moment at the moment where I just haven't felt like anything that has come out has been okay, and just been kind of quite unhappy with what I'm producing. But I know that if I look back on it later, I'll be absolutely fine with it. But so it's sailing those ups and downs of this is great. We've talked about this on the show before. Sometimes I'll write something and it just comes out like it was placed there, and I'm like, God, this is amazing. This is so good. I love it. And other times you'll like struggle your way through 1,500 words, and you'll think like, oh, God, just don't know if that is any good. And I think trying to find an even way to ride that wave is quite often, I think, the most challenging part of being a writer, because I think also like once you've got enough confidence, you've done it enough times, which is what the show has been great for, is just being forced to write continue. You get a bit more like certain of your judgment on certain things like perspective or all sorts of the kind of like the technical bits you get a bit more confident about, but it's the arrangement of the words on the page that sometimes you think like, oh, that could have been 1,000% better, but I just don't know how.
Yeah. I mean, I feel sometimes I'm always telling myself, no one has imposter syndrome as bad as I do. And then I'm like, oh, never mind. People have it.
I think everybody does. Like, you talk to like loads of professional writers that have made it, and you consider that they have made it, and you're so jealous of their career and that you want it. And you talk to them and they're like, oh, actually, like I feel like I haven't done very well. And you want to shake them because like, oh my God, I would love to have your career. But I think there's always that next object A, isn't there? Like, oh, I've got an agent. Oh, will my book sell? Oh, my book hasn't sold very well. Am I going to get a new book deal? I am not a bestseller. I haven't won a Pulitzer Prize. I'm not like I'm not Jane Austen. There is always like that next ladder step, isn't there?
Yeah, there's always constant pressure. We're like, okay, there's pressure for you to land an agent. You get the agent. Then there's pressure for the publisher to buy your book. Then you get the book bought. And then there's pressure for you to start a new book. And then you worry about if readers are going to connect with it. It's constant pressure like that. I ended up asking like one have you heard of Rebecca Yarros?
Yes. Yeah.
She was here. I'm in Dubai. So she was here probably about 2 years ago for like an Emirates Lit Fest. They do something every year with writers that come over here, authors that come over here and basically do talks and things like that. And I was able to just ask her about like about imposter syndrome and how she gets over it. And she's like, I never had it when I write. I have it now that my book is out. I'm like, what? So
that is interesting. That is, I don't think it's unusual. So the thing that I hear from almost everybody who's already got an agent is already there, is that the people who get through are just the people who persist. You just have to push past that bit where you feel, and this is called good self-advice. This is like self-talk I'm giving myself right now. You just have to persist, finish that draft, just do it, and then you can move on to the next bit.
Yes.
It's hard though, because like, so I'm under a 2-book deal at the moment with Avon, and the first book comes out in May. So at the moment it's all the like the pre-sales selling, our bookshops ordering physical copies of the book, like where's it going to go, what will that look like, etc. So I'm having to worry about getting all of the PR elements done, like this articles I need to write, the short stories and things to kind of help with the marketing, etc. But I also have to finish the second book because that's due to go to the publisher in July, which means I don't even know if the first book's going to be successful before I have to deliver a sequel. And it's this kind of fear of and it's definitely been, weirdly, as much as for the second book I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to write, it's been a little bit of a struggle getting into some of the writing on it, because my brain keeps thinking, but if the first book doesn't sell, why am I writing the second?
Yeah.
It's a very weird thing. Like I didn't do this. I very nearly emailed my publisher, who's lovely, to be like, so should I definitely be writing a sequel for the second book of the 2-book deal, or should I think of something different? Because I've probably got time to write something completely different. But I didn't in the end. I was like, screw it. They've already signed off what the second book will be. It's fine.
Yeah. How was it with the whole, like, if you could give kind of like a short summary of how your whole query thing went? Like, how was that experience for you, Sam?
I didn't query.
Oh.
What happened was that I was notified about an opportunity which Nick sent me, and actually or someone else as well. So I used to ghostwrite for people and also write custom literature for people, by which I mean
That's a great way of putting that. Custom literature.
custom literature for people who are not served in the wider market, who wish for something that's very specific to their desires.
Yes.
So I got sent an opportunity where one of the large women's literature publishers, Avon is an imprint of HarperCollins, and they do all of the stuff that is like pop literature for women. Like, it's meant to be good, hearty, fun reads that specifically are for a female audience across lots of different genres. And they were looking for ghostwriters to recruit for some of their author IPs. So I submitted an application along with a couple of sample chapters of an original piece that I had, and got an email asking if I would chat with the publisher, because they'd liked the writing and they were considering me for a ghostwriter position. And on the conversation, we started talking about other things that they were looking for. And it just so happened I screenwrite as well as podcast and write novels. I'd been playing around with a concept for a feature film that I actually thought would make a better book. So I pitched the idea to the publisher, and she came back a couple of days later to say that actually, rather than hiring me as a ghostwriter, they were really interested in the concept I'd pitched, and would I send them the first couple of chapters for them to have a look at, and they would base a decision on that. So I wrote up the chapters, sent it in, and got a contract back to get that book written and to get the sequel in the works as well. So that's how that happened for me. So not a querying process, but a kind of a sideways, I guess, step through, because I don't have a literary agent. I do have a screenwriting manager based in the US.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. What a way to cut through. Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
I think yours is a great story as well, because so many of us become obsessed with the agent querying process.
That's
and
true,
I think
too.
sometimes it is not, I mean, it's mainly the way, but it is not the only way. So sorry, I have
and I do think, like, and I don't know whether it's just because I'm in screenwriting where there are 1,001 different ways to get something made for screen, and there's no egg in one basket approach. There isn't just querying management. That's simply, you'll never succeed if that's all you do. And I don't know whether that's maybe not touted enough in kind of author circles, where if you're aspiring to be an author, look for all the other different ways and opportunities. What you're writing as a novel might make a great picture book, it might make an incredible podcast, it might make a great screenplay, whatever. But then also don't look at those as purely straight line traditional routes. Look for collaborators and people that are interested, that are doing their own thing, because it's very easy to fixate on traditional routes and then you miss an opportunity that you would have had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is one of the reasons why we started the podcast. In fact, the genesis of the podcast was a talk that I went to at that first Jericho Writers Conference. And I remember coming out of, I'd stayed overnight at the hotel on the Saturday, because we had the gala, didn't we? And I got up on the Sunday, and I remember walking through the city of London really early on the Sunday morning to go home to get the train, and calling Samantha and being like, oh, I've just been to this event and they've been talking about kind of like routes into publishing and kind of like listening to all the authors talk about their previous experience. And I think what we should do is start a podcast of some kind in which we can just write, and we will just be able to practice writing, and maybe only 5 people will ever listen to it, and it won't matter. It's just a place for us to put things that we are experimenting with, so that we can just have that experience of writing stuff and putting it out there into the world without having to go through a gatekeeping process, which is the frustrating part, right? And then I think later on it was Samantha who's like, well, we should do it as a dual rather than just doing it as a straightforward information podcast, because we're not historians. And one of the great things about doing it this way, I wouldn't recommend it to that many people, because it is actually quite a lot of work. It's significantly more work than I initially thought it was, is that you get an audience for your writing, even if it is only 5 people. It's just that thing that fulfills that bit inside of you that wants somebody to listen to or have read what it is that you have produced, which is the frustrating part of going through the querying process. because I think especially these days it can feel like you are querying to the void, because because of the amount of queries going out, it's just not possible for everybody to get a response. And I think if that's you, if you're sitting there with 36 queries made and not even like a standard pass letter to show for it, it can feel quite tough. We were talking about this the other day, weren't we? That messy women post about like, thank you for submitting your soul to us for marking. We've had 76 million other queries. They were all better than yours, because that's what you think, don't you, when you don't get through like whatever.
Yeah, it's just really, it can be really disheartening. I mean, I haven't been able to finish my book, so it's not like I could even get started on the query process yet, but I've heard, that it can really be a disheartening process. But the good thing to know about this is that I don't think anyone gets it on the first agent that they query. Usually it's quite a few rejections before you even hear a yes.
I think if you were the author with that story to tell, people might hunt you down. Like nobody wants to hear that story. So maybe there is somebody, but they've never told it because they know nobody else wants to hear that story.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Just to get back a little bit to where you're talking about, Nikki, in terms of like the imposter syndrome, do you bounce ideas off of Sam, or when you have imposter syndrome, do you guys talk about?
I can tell you right now, I don't think Nicola could tell you anything about the things I wrote most recently, but I could tell you literally everything about hers.
To be fair to me, like I'm only ever doing one at a time apart from the show stories. And the show stories are great because actually it's a way of learning about each other's writing, because we don't show each other before we read them live on the podcast. It's quite a nice way to get to know each other's writing style. You are quite often working on a lot of different things at once. So you do tell me about some of them, but I know about the secret project that you're working on about the family secret. Like I've heard about that one, and I've heard about your zombie TV show, which
that's like old news. That was last year.
That was last year. And I know about the one that you're looking at the moment, that script that you've sent out to the blacklist. I do know about that one too.
Tell me anything about it.
I don't know about it. It would just be very difficult to come up with specifics right now. And also, I don't want to spoiler it because it's apparently very good.
Yeah, that's nice that you guys are able to do that. Like bounce ideas off each other when you're stuck, or like, I'm having a terrible writing day. What should I do? Someone's there to talk you off the cliff. So yeah.
I think it is more moral support than like specific support, because the worst thing that you could ever do in a sibling relationship is ask the other person for notes. I think because like we both go at things in a slightly different way mentally, and we're also not very good at giving each other feedback. So
you've asked me to read and give you notes all the time.
We're just not good at accepting it from each other.
Yeah, I was going to say, you ask me for notes literally all the time.
No, not anymore. I've stopped. Although the other day I was on the train and I had this what I think was a great idea, and I texted
and sent it to me immediately.
He read it. He just never responded.
Oh.
Because I've heard the idea before.
Yeah. Not from me. That was a new idea.
No, that's true. Not from me.
Not a new idea in general.
But I mean, that would be fun.
That's a good thing too. Then I guess like no response means maybe get another idea.
Yeah, I think that's what's helpful, but it's also helpful having somebody who's doing it at the same time. Like not necessarily, we're not doing the same querying process because you're mostly doing screenwriting querying processes, but like I would never have done any of the Jericho stuff if Samantha hadn't already been doing roadmap stuff and finding it really helpful. And so what I eventually wanted was like, you were finding roadmap really useful, so I thought I need to find something similar but for the writing that I'm doing. And so I just went and found a course that looked similar, the same. And it is actually tremendously, incredibly helpful. I think people sometimes think that writers have to know, like I'm an adult and I went to school, I should be able to write a book. But actually, you need to go do those professional courses. All that CPD stuff is really helpful because things change in publishing all the time. You have to read stuff. You have to make sure you're on top of not on top of the trends so much. You shouldn't be like trying to chase those, but you just know what is going on.
There's also just a lot of unwritten rules that people expect you to know in the industry. And if you don't know them, it's very obvious, very apparent, and very quickly to people. And then they can tell you're a newbie and you sort of lose some credibility quite easily. And again, I think it's, there's rules around formatting and stuff, and you can look things up if you know to think about that, but the reality is that often people don't know to think about that. You don't know what a synopsis or an outline should look like. You know, you don't know how to put together a book pitch, or, you know, like if it's in television, you don't know how to put together like a series bible, that kind of stuff. You don't even know that's something you might have to do, which then becomes like quite an unprofessional conversation if you do ever get the chance to be in the room with someone.
Yeah, I do feel though that writing, of course, it's kind of a marriage between intuition and knowledge. You know, you can't let people kind of, because I was talking to one woman recently and I was giving her a little bit of a synopsis regarding my book, and she was like, angels and demons aren't very marketable right now. And I was like, oh Lord, I'm almost finished with this damn book. And then I spoke to someone else, another author, and she's like, I see no reason why it wouldn't be marketable, especially the way that you're doing it. So it's also kind of like, you have to really believe in your book, and they're definitely going to be contradicting themselves. So
I hard agree. And it's interesting because like I think a lot of people would say like the number one bit of bad advice they get that's actually relevant is the whole, just write something that's undeniable. Just write something that like that you love and it's undeniable. And that's a totally meaningless phrase, right? Because actually nobody knows what undeniable means. It's that certain something that when you pick a thing up and read it, you specifically as a reader might really connect with, but somebody else won't. So there's no such thing anyway as undeniable. But what I think the note is that people mean by that when they give that is you have to believe in the thing you have written. Like, I think you can tell when somebody hasn't had fun with what they're writing, they haven't lived in it. And you know, you don't have to be writing a fun story to have fun with it, if that makes sense. Like, you know, you can be a Sylvia Plath writing deep depression, but you could feel the emotional resonance within it. It was honest. And I think that's what people mean when they say just write something undeniable, because market is obviously very important to publishers of all kinds. But the reality is the time it takes to get media, books, films, TV shows, etc. made and out there generally means the market will be changing all of the time. So that really great undeniable book might not be a right now, but it might be we can see it coming up in a year, etc.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem also as well, especially in like online writer support groups or like the meetings that you go to, is that people often give advice about other people's books without A, having understood anything about that book, and B, not necessarily knowing an awful lot about the inside of publishing. And like, not that I do, but my philosophy now is when people are pitching their books to me or like talking about their books with me, is like, you just be encouraging. That's great. You keep going. The advice could only ever be keep going. Like, it might not be your cup of tea, but there is not everything is for everyone. It's just that person is not the target market for that book. And you know, you work on it and you send it to an agent, you find an agent that loves it, then you know it's going to be great. I think there's a lot of discouragement and a lot of discouraging advice floating around out there, like specifically those critiques that people do online where you put up the first page of your manuscript and people shred it to pieces. I avoid those like the plague now, because I don't think I've ever had a helpful piece of advice come out of that situation. It's mostly people looking for errors rather than looking to help. So
sort of the classic, everyone, that advice is like arseholes, right? Everyone's got one and usually it stinks. And it's like,
yes, like there's a lot of stinky writing advice out there as well, especially like all those TikTok channels that really, really want to give you writing advice, but because it's bite size, it's never deep enough, it's never kind of thoughtful enough, and the feedback is never specific enough to what you're doing. You know, when you're in that moment where you're like, fix my book, somebody just fix my book, there's something wrong with it, I know there's something wrong with it. It's that you actually already know what's wrong with it. Like, I don't know, like 9 times out of 10, you know what's wrong with it. You just don't want to make that change because it's either really long-winded or it involves deleting something that you really enjoy that you know you should probably get rid of.
Yeah, that's true. I just feel like, there's a whole bunch of, I mean, obviously with the internet and everything out there, it's saturated with a bunch of information regarding how to become a better writer and everything. But I also feel like what I mentioned before is don't study every single course that you see on writing. I get overwhelmed if I start kind of like going through all these lessons, because some of them contradict each other. So I feel
Yes.
like it's kind of just like a good balance of what it is you absolutely think you need help on, and then the rest that you, maybe the other points in terms of writing that you think you might be able to carry on yourself, do that first.
Yes.
And then, yeah.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
about like your writing process? Like, what does that look like when you're deeply immersed versus when you need to step back?
You can go first on this one, so I don't know. But hold on.
I mean, I have to write a lot all of the time, by the nature of the fact that it's my career. So this is I do other side work that helps support me as well, but it's part of what supports me. And it's interesting because generally when I have a story that's going on, it's living with me at almost every moment, which doesn't necessarily mean I'm writing it. So it's that thing where it's like, oh, I'm out at the shops, and while I'm driving out there, I'm playing out in my head how I think the next part of a chapter will play out. What kind of dialogue am I hearing? What do I think the characters would do and why, to get that story beat to the place I think it should get to? Was I wrong in that story beat? Do I need to change directions? What does that do to the rest of it? So I have to enforce fairly strict writing timelines. And it's sort of, I think it's because if I'm given an ineffable amount of time to do something, I don't do it. So I have like a tracker every day, and I set myself specific goals. And I try and be kind to myself with it. Like it it's not always, sometimes you wake up and you feel terrible and nothing's coming out, and maybe whatever you wrote is rubbish. But that's also why I have multiple projects. So if I'm struggling on one, that doesn't mean I'm going to struggle on another. So like I have maybe 2 different scripts going at the same time. I've got a book concept I'm working on. I'll have some podcast things I need to do for Wyrd Folk or for any of the other pieces that I'm writing for, etc. So I try and sort of run down the priority and be like, okay, today I'm not going to be able to do the 5 pages of the script that I need to get done. So my aim is going to be 1,500 words on the novel instead. So I give myself change up time as well.
Okay.
But sometimes you just have to do it. Sometimes it's just like, if I don't write 2,000 words every day for the next week, I'm screwed. So shop, head down, and you do nothing else but this.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, do you ever feel burnout from writing all these different things at once? Do you ever have to take a step back from everything in terms of writing to kind of like refresh your mind, or no?
The only times I've experienced creative burnout has been more because of external factors that are going on. Our father passed away last year after like a couple of years of ill health, and the final 6 months of significant ill health where we were providing a lot of support to him. I'd also quit a fairly intensive corporate role that was in a kind of a senior position, and it took a bit of time for me to figure out that the reason I would get frustrated with some of my writing was more to do with those external factors and less to do with my actual creativity not functioning, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Personally, anyway.
Yeah. What about you, Nikki?
Yeah, now that I have finished coughing, although it might come back. Hold on. Yeah, similar. Like external factors. Until Dad died, I didn't realise quite how much the psychology of writing works, because I was just finishing a year-long novel writing course and also doing the kind of production stuff for Wyrd Folk as well as the writing. And I'd gotten myself up to the point where I had been spinning a lot of plates for a long time and kind of fairly successfully doing so. And then Dad died and it stopped for a bit, and I'd finished that novel, that first draft. And since then, that's when I've had like this kind of like almost 9 months now of like much slower writing process, because I think as you're going through a process of like quite a big life change, kind of finding your way through mentally, that it's, and also like I still work, right? I have a job that is like quite intensive during the day, lots of kind of things going on, and I've got a small child. And so my writing brain is quite often overcrowded with those things, and also like the coping mechanisms I came up with for Dad's death. It's been a lot of career dramas, and so it slowed down a lot my process. So this I did a first redraft of the book in about 6 weeks on the just like coming out of the chaos of all of that, and then the third draft, which is like basically where I've actually addressed all of the real problems rather than just skated over the top of like things that I thought I wanted to fix. So you have to like, well, now I have to go fix the things that actually need fixing for it to be a good book, which has resulted in like huge changes. It's like that book is going to look so different than the first draft did, and it's going to have to. And I'm stuck about halfway through, stuck at the midpoint, and that midpoint scene I have written 5 times and I'm still not happy with it. So, and I just keep writing it, but you have to keep writing it. So like I try and do 40 minutes a day of something, whether that is like a Wyrd Folk story. And the Wyrd Folk stories are quite good because they get you out of that turgid bits. You're like, well, I've successfully completed something this week. So ticks for me having successfully written something this week. And they're quite good because they're somebody said to us that they're flash fiction, and I'd never thought of them like that, but because our word limit is roughly 1,400 words, they are kind of flash fiction, you know,
according to short story publications, but whatever.
Oh, right. Short story, flash fiction, whatever. And they're really tight, and actually having the discipline to write short stories, I would really encourage people who are struggling with longer novels to go and write some short stories, because actually the discipline for writing a short story is just the mini practice for writing something longer, and you can apply what you have to do for that to your bigger piece of work later. I would say, so I now write my chapters. The chapters that I'm now struggling through, I am writing as short stories. So to try and move myself on between things. So
I mean, it's what in my opinion anyway, it's what a chapter should be though. I think like, and that's probably my particular style anyway, but I think every chapter should hook you to move forward, and the only way to do that is to think about it as a complete piece in its own right. Like someone needs to read this, have gotten something from it, had a revelation, a change, a question, whatever that's happened, and at the end of the chapter desperately want to read the next one to see how that develops into the next question, change, or whatever. I cannot abide the really long-winded fantasy books that meander for chapters where nothing happens. It drives me up the wall. And Charles Dickens with his side stories, what the F?
No, you can't pick on Charles Dickens because I love him, and it's all relevant in the end with Charles Dickens, but not with
It's so long to get there though.
It does. So no, I think that's a really good piece of advice, is that chapters should be essentially short stories, and if you're kind of stuck on a section, like I found, I don't know about you, Samantha, that if you're stuck on a section you really can't move past it, it's because there is something previously on from it that is wrong, and you need to work your way back to the bit that is wrong and fix that before you can move forward.
It's rarely in that immediate place where you got stuck with as a problem. It's always something further up the line.
So then basically, okay, because that actually segues good into, I don't even have to ask my next question, because I was going to ask like how do you get yourself unstuck? So then basically for both of you, it would be kind of like doing, well, I know Sam that you were saying that you basically write all the time anyway, so it seems like you have that down in terms of like your discipline and moving from one piece to another if you're creatively stuck. But for you, Nikki, you would focus more on like writing short stories to kind of get your creative juices back when you're writing a novel length manuscript.
I think so. I think also reading other people's, like, just like keep up with your reading, because it reminds you what is possible to do. So I'm reading a really great book at the moment called Mia by Danielle Blake, and that has been really inspirational to me because it's like a gothic piece of fiction set in this kind of like landscape, and I kind of like, it's not similar to my book, it's kind of similar genre, it's because hers is not a YA, but it has reminded me what the genre conventions are, because it's easy if you're just living in your own world to get lost, and you maybe like going back and referencing, and you should be reading around your genre anyway, just to make sure that you know what's going on with that genre.
Yeah. I mean, have you both ever questioned if you want to continue writing, like every once in a while, like wanting to kick the bucket when it comes to that, or?
I think the revelation to me, and the reason I quit my day job on stuff, was there had never been a time in my life where I hadn't written, where I hadn't, like, I tell myself stories to go to sleep at night. Like, when I'm laid there, I'm not running through the day, I'm telling a story. And it used to be that those were just random made up snippets. Now they're pieces of whatever I'm working on. You know, it's what does that chapter look like? What's the character doing? And I think I had this realization that I was never going to not write. I was never going to not be somebody who was driven to tell stories. And since I was going to do it anyway, I should be paid. And the only way to get myself to be paid was to put myself in a position where I had no choice but to be paid. Because it's very easy to languish, I think, in that area of you're chipping away at the same novel for 10, 15 years. And my thing, and I used to nag Nicola about this, is like, just finish something. And it's going to be shit. It's it's not going to be great. It's not going to be perfect. Finish it, put it aside, come back and have a look at it again, and you'll like read other stuff, read other books in that genre, read other stories, watch TVs, watch movies, stuff that you'll watch and you'll see the way somebody else is crafting story, the way they're dealing with language, the way they're filling white space to make it interesting. Go back and look at it and you'll see the ways that it can be different and better. But if you don't finish it, you can't ever do that.
Yes, you were quite naggy about that. Yes, no, I think it is it. Yeah, so I have thought about. I didn't write for ages. I had my first novel was one of those 15-year ones where I'd come up with the idea when I was in my mid-20s and then just left it for ages, and then went back to it during COVID, like everybody did. But from that point onwards, when I started writing it again and took it a little bit more seriously and had a bit more motivation to do it, I get really angry, really depressed if I haven't done it for a while. I've noticed that about myself. I'm itchy, just really for no reason, just annoyed. And it's because I haven't done the thing that I need to do. I don't know about you, but it's like cleanse your brain of all the things that you thought about. Like, it needs to go down onto paper. Now it's down on paper. I feel a bit better about it. And I think from that realization, I don't think I would ever stop. I think sometimes it's okay to give up on a project if it's driven you wild and you can't see a way forward for it. Go do something else. You've got other ideas. Everybody's got other ideas. I texted Samantha a really terrible idea the other day that she didn't like, but like, I've got another idea that I could work on. And that was the whole point of starting Wyrd Folk, actually, is to have other things to work on, other ideas for those bits where you're really stuck with something. Be like, well, I've got to write a story for the show, so I'll go do that, and that'll make me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you're feeling stuck on one thing, then work on something else, as long as you're able to finish something.
Yeah,
I feel
it's hard. It's hard to finish that thing.
But once you finish the first thing, it's a lot easier to finish more. Like, once you've done it once and you figure out how you managed to get there, it's suddenly a lot easier to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's
and also, all first drafts they're not awful, but like, one of my writing mentors, he said to me, like, some people can write really polished first drafts, but then they tend to be lazy editors. And then, but like, the tendency is to think that your first draft should be polished, and nobody's first draft looks like their final piece. So you just get it down, and then you go through the second painful process, which is shredding it to pieces almost entirely and putting it back together like Frankenstein's monster into a new form. And that can be quite satisfying, but it's really distressing at the time that you're doing it. But it's like, it's necessary.
I think it's the line edits that are worse when you're going through, like, because that's all your grammar and everything. And it's also someone being like, well, did you mean this from the way they said it, or did you mean this? And you're like, clearly it is self-evident in the story, had you read it properly, that I meant this. But then it's like, oh, okay, but if they didn't get that, I probably am missing something. Like, if they're not picking it up, there's going to be a bunch of readers that aren't going to pick it up. So I do need to figure out a different way to say it. That, to me, was the part that was really frustrating, versus the like more major edit type things. Because as Nick said, like, the major edit type stuff, you already know where the problems are. You just want somebody else to shove a finger on them and make you do it.
No, I think with the developmental edit, you know where the problems are. You just don't want to have to change them, because they're usually so deep that they're going to require such massive changes to your work. Yeah. Nobody likes that.
Do you like, what are your writing strengths and like your weaknesses?
Mine is an addiction to the words but and then. I have to go through and take them out of everything that I write, even the show stories, which don't get a lot of editing because of the time tightness. I still do try and go through it or take out all the buts and thens.
And what do you feel like your strength is with writing?
I have been told, because I don't like positives about myself. I have been told that I'm quite good at atmospheric setting. That, you know, I'm quite good at building like an atmospheric world from like very little. So there you go. I think I'm not bad at that.
Yeah, that's a really good strength.
Mm.
What about you, Sue?
I also have words that I'm over reliant on, and I can't remember what it is now. But like on the edits, like there's a bit where they do that, right? They look for how many times you've used specific words. If they start to notice it, and then you have to go through and change almost all of them, and then you're like, wow, I went from using this word 100 times to 5. So there are words like that. I can't remember any off the top of my head. I think like I'm very action oriented, which sometimes means that my emotional beats don't quite land. So generally one of the things that I'll do is write something and then I'll go back through and be more thoughtful about what I think the emotion I'm trying to convey is in the moment, and different ways that I can convey that isn't just they're like, oh, she says angrily to indicate that someone's mad. Actually, there's lots of
inferiority.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of strengths, I think I'm fairly good at writing well-rounded characters, like as in like people, like you feel like they're a person that's a collective of personality.
Samantha's got amazing authorial voice, and like one of the joys of doing the show with her has been to listen to her stories, and she's particularly good at comedy writing. There have been some stories that, so your Jack the Giant Slayer story was just great, and the one for Cern Abbas was so funny that like even though my microphone is muted, we had to stop a couple of times because like we were pretty hysterical. But I think you're really good at writing character, and you've got like a really strong like authorial tone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Interesting. I mean, the book I've got coming out is highly comedic, and it's weird because I don't think I ever, if I was picking when I thought my debut novel would be out to the public, it certainly would not be like a crime comedy.
But I think that's what you're good at. I would say that you are really good at comedy, and I think I am slightly better at horror in a kind of setting kind of way. But it's interesting to see like the strengths and weaknesses that come out over the space. Although I've only heard your Wyrd Folk shorts, so I've never read any one of your horror scripts.
It make you.
Yeah.
So what? So Sam, you have a book coming out called Sleuths in May.
Yeah. It's as I said, it's like a comedic kind of crime novel about 3 super fans who, while stalking the actor they're obsessed with, uncover a sex trafficking ring in a private members club and decide to bring it and him to justice. It's an interesting one because it was a bit of a knife edge between the crime that they're investigating is obviously very serious, but they are ridiculous. So balancing that kind of internet sleuth style person and kind of modern life. I think a lot of crime novels are still very much in that quite old-fashioned cozy crime novel space. Actually, like, I'm in some really bonkers fandoms. I know what the group chats are about. I know how quickly a single photograph can reveal almost everything about where a person is, who they're with, etc. And the people that are very obsessive who do that execute it with a level of skill that's quite frightening, and yet none of them work for investigative agencies. You know, these are,
they should do.
Yeah, they should do, but generally there's normal people with normal jobs doing whatever. It's just that for this particular obsession, they're able to do that, and the internet and the availability of information is remarkable for that perspective. So I was just really keen to write something that demonstrated those people, how bonkers the world is and the headspace is that they inhabit in these processes, but also how those skills can be used for good, and how people recognize how unhealthy their behaviours and relationships are, and how we form new connections when we do that. So it's a bit of a redemption story for toxic fans.
Okay.
It was an undeniable concept as well, because I feel
Yeah.
like the first time you told it to me, I was like, wow, that is amazing. Why haven't I come up with something that good?
I mean, the early reader reviews are really mixed between people who are like, oh my God, I love it. Oh, it's hilarious. And people who are like, this is very modern. I didn't understand.
And so where can everyone can find you guys on? Are you guys on all social media platforms?
We are, for the show, I am on Instagram. I have a private Instagram for other things that people can try and add me on, but I accept very few people. Samantha has got a forward-facing public Instagram. You've got a website as well, haven't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah. More than happy to connect with people, tell stories, etc. It's probably going to bite me in the arse one day, but I live very much by the perspective of I don't do things that I'll regret. Therefore, I have nothing that I'm ashamed of on social media.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be. Oh, for the show, we are Wyrd.folkpod. If anybody wants to come and find us on Instagram, or we have a website called .com. I think that's correct. Wyrdfolkpod.com. And we are on Apple and Spotify and all sorts of places. So if you like the idea of like weird folk horror writing where Samantha and I argue with each other, then that's.
I think the bickering adds something.
It does.
Yeah.
It adds everything. It adds.
Yeah, the whole sister dynamic is also adds just that extra layer of excitement and interest to it. So yeah, but thanks so much, guys, for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure obviously our conversation will help someone who may be stuck with their own manuscript to gain inspiration and keep moving forward.
So it's nice to see you again, Iman. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.